time for the next talk. So Christy Lutz is actually one of the organizers here. It was just sort of coincidence. She's been working very hard. You might have seen her back there at check-in and registration. Yeah, so we got, yeah, we appreciate that. She's also published. She's a published crochet designer. Yeah, right? So here she is.
Thanks, guys. That was so nice. Hi, I'm Christy Lutz. I'm a technical communicator. I'm currently doing contract work for a company outside of LA, and I've worked for companies like Jive Software and Monsoon Commerce. Technically, I've been a technical writer for about 3-ish years now, but I kind of feel like I've always been a technical writer. Probably like a lot of you here in the audience, I've always been drawn to writing that can help people. But there's something really scary about sharing your writing, any work really, but especially your writing. And I think it's because we're all expected to be writers, but on the other hand, all writers need feedback, and that can be terrifying. So let's talk about that, because we're not in Kansas anymore. Let's talk about how to find courage while following the technical doc road. Because following the technical doc road can be scary. So travel with friends. Who are your friends? Your friends are your team. And by team, I don't just mean the people that HR put you with when you were hired. I mean the QA, DevOps, support people that you talk to every day for help with your documentation and who also rely on your documentation for help. Your team is your greatest asset, and just by working with you, they're already on this technical doc road with you. So talk to your team as much as you can about documentation. I had a job where day 2, my boss said to me, by day 5, you need to have a meeting with all of the content stakeholders in the company and tell them what our content plan for the future is going to be. But instead of doing that, we had a meeting where we asked them what they thought the content resources for the company was. And we had everyone come up to a whiteboard and list out the content resources they used. That way we had that list to start a conversation about our content plan for the future. My other favorite place to talk to my team is at stand-ups. If your company is agile and there are Scrum teams that are developing features that you will be documenting, then you belong at stand-ups or any meetings where your features are being discussed. Stand-ups are a goldmine of information. Just by going every day, you can learn so much about your features and get so many questions answered. And by you going every day and talking about your documentation, your team will naturally be involved and invested in your documentation. So instead of you going to them and then coming to you, meet in the middle. Your team will naturally keep you in the loop, and writing your docs will be easier. Sometimes I think being a technical writer is more about being vulnerable than anything else, no matter what a job description may say. And that's really hard, because being vulnerable is a willingness to be wrong, and not just that, but a willingness to be wrong in public, and that can be terrifying. So who better to do that with than with your team? Expect your team to be open and honest with you in their feedback of your documentation. And if they need feedback from you, be open and honest with them. Another huge part of vulnerability is compromise, so pick your fights, because it's not about whether or not your sentence is perfect, it's about clarity and helping people. So take advantage of that team, rely on them, and collaborate with them. I recently had some tech docs reviewed by a developer, and when he finished reading them, he came over to my desk and he had this horrible look on his face, and I was just like, what was so awful about those docs? And he said, nothing, they look great, technically they're great, it's just that I found a grammar mistake in one of your drafts. And I can't come over here and tell you about a grammar mistake. I was like, yes, you can, and you should. Because you need to collaborate with your team. Because they're helping you, but you can help them as well. Just a couple of weeks earlier with the same team, I had collaborated with them on some UI text. I know Mike Jang did a really great Write the Docs meetup speech once on UI text collaboration. That's a great point of collaboration for your team. Your team can help you, and you should help your team as well. Because in the end, docs are better with a team. Maybe you're the person who's the best at writing how-tos, but you prefer to talk to a professional services person about strategy. Or maybe you're a developer who's really excited about her features and wants to write with her favorite technical writer. People wear a lot of hats these days, but you cannot wear all the hats. But the hats you're wearing are the hats that your team needs, and docs are better and stronger with a team. So you have your team, and now you have to figure out where you're going. You cannot get to the Emerald City if you can't follow the yellow brick road. So have a plan. Ask your managers, ask your colleagues, what is the goal of your day, your career, your documentation project, your topics? Write those down, pin them up to a wall, and then when you're lacking courage and need guidance, look at those goals and ask yourself, is what I'm doing right now supporting those goals? That's going to give you guidance like nothing else. And if you're not getting clear answers of what your goals of your project are, then you write them. Some great advice I got from a coworker named Victoria. She once said to me, just write down what you think you should be doing. So I wrote up a plan for myself for the near future, and I went into my boss and I said, I do this now until someone tells me to stop. And he said, that's great, go for it. So keep those plans somewhere you can refer to them to give you courage. Do a lot of research also to support your plan. You're going to have more confidence in your goals if you've done some research, and then you'll have more confidence in your writing. Some of the best research you can do is to see if someone else already solved the problem that you're trying to solve. That's basically what this conference here is about. But some other really great research that you can do is research on yourself. So ask yourself, why did I make this decision for my documentation? Why did I lay out my page this way? Is it because I didn't want someone to come to this page and then run away screaming because it's a wall of text? Or did I delete a couple of sentences from my paragraph? Because sometimes people don't read, and we want our docs to help as many people as possible. Ask yourself these questions and have those answers with you to give you courage when you're getting some feedback. And then, no matter how much research you do, no matter how many plans you make, the road is really windy. So things are going to change. And if the goals change, that does not reflect poorly on you. It actually reflects really well on you if you can take in new information, remain flexible, and then improve your output. Okay, so you have your team, and you have your goals, and you've done some writing, and now you're submitting it for feedback. This is the terrifying part. How do you gain courage here? How do you get better at it? You get better at it by doing it all the time. Practice sharing all the time. Share with everyone. Share with your dog. Seriously, read out loud to your dog. You can learn so much about your writing just by hearing it read out loud. So once you get the thumbs up from your dog that your writing is really good, try this trick. Find the person whose feedback scares you the most and practice on them. For me, it's this person. She's so scary. This is my sister, Cheryl. When we were in college together, I had a speech class, and she allowed me to practice my speeches on her before I went into the classroom. And I was more terrified of that tiny audience of one than of an entire classroom filled with hungover freshmen. So just by practicing on her and getting her feedback, I had the courage to go into the classroom and do a better speech. So find your Cheryl and practice on her as much as you can. Also, try practicing design critique. Design critique is like the red ruby slippers wizard tricks of feedback. It's basically a set of rules for giving and getting feedback. You identify the project stakeholders and the project goals. Then you share those goals and gather feedback. While you're gathering feedback, just listen and take it all in. This is not the time for justifying your intent or justifying your decisions. Just write it all down and ask questions for clarification. Then, once you've gathered all of that feedback, you and the stakeholders, including you, because you are a stakeholder in your writing, sit down and then you own it. You get to do whatever you want with it. You can pour rum all over it and light it on fire if you want. Probably please don't do that, but you can because you get to decide how it makes your project stronger. So with your team, you go through each piece of feedback one by one, and you compare it to the goals, and you say, does this piece of feedback support the goals of the project? If it doesn't, it's outside the scope of the project. It's not bad. I mean, everybody's had a project where someone was like, I want unicorns to shoot out of the screen, and I only want to pay $2. And That's awesome, but it's outside the scope of the project. So once you've distilled the feedback down to the feasible feedback, you and your team get to decide how it makes your project stronger. And speaking of feedback, expect some of it to be positive. I know a bunch of the writers in this room, and you do not write shit. There is something good about everything you write, and you deserve to hear that out loud. Ideally, it should come first, before any negative feedback. And sometimes you hear something like, well, I didn't like this, and I didn't like this, and I didn't like this, but I really love the font you chose for this project. And that's okay. Embrace that positive feedback. And if you don't hear it from somebody else, give it to yourself. Say something like, thank you for your feedback. I look forward to reviewing it, and I chose a really great font for this project. Always remember the goals of your project. Consider the whole picture, because in the end, you are not your writing, and your writing is not you. The goal is the goal of the project, not whether or not your writing is perfect. And that brings me to my main point, which is that nothing is perfect. Feels like at every conference, somebody has to talk about this, so I'll be your quota for this one. Imposter syndrome. What does it mean that we all have imposter syndrome? It means that we all have imposter syndrome, which means a lot of smart people you know have imposter syndrome. And so you're probably doing okay, because you are not an imposter. You're a badass word ninja. So just let it go and keep writing. There is no team, there is no project that is without its challenges. So acknowledge those challenges, talk about them out loud. There's something that my former boss, Mari Devoto, used to do that I really liked. During interviews, she would say, what is the biggest challenge that happened to you while you were writing some documentation? So, did you break your leg, and then the office ran out of coffee, and then your SME quit, and you still wrote documentation that helped people? Oh my God, you're amazing. It's important to talk about these adversities, and even more important, to acknowledge that you overcame them. Because in the end, nothing is perfect. Your drafts are not perfect. The feedback on your drafts, not perfect. Your response to the feedback on your drafts, not perfect. But the point of technical documentation is not perfection. It's helping people. And there's something inside each and every one of you that wants to help people and is not afraid to share your writing. And that's the secret here. That's the main secret. You were already brave. You don't need ruby slippers. You don't need wizard tricks. You were already brave for starting down this technical doc road. So just keep going. Thank you.